Hello, welcome to Old Virginia Homes. If you've joined me before, you'll realize right away that today's tour is going to be a bit of a detour from our regular visits to the amazing historic homes our state holds. As you can see, I'm not sitting behind the wheel of my car eagerly anticipating our next tour. Today we'll be exploring 5 Old Virginia homes that have unfortunately disappeared for different reasons. Some due to fire, some due to demolition by neglect. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you've watched before, welcome back. As always, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to help me keep this content relevant and available. Also, I love hearing your thoughts about these old homes. So if you have a fact to share or your own reflections on these places, please be sure to comment. Since you're here, I imagine you agree that historic homes are not simply relics, not just mere curiosities of times past, but are living witnesses to our unfolding American story. At one time, these 5 lost houses were wonderful repositories of the stories of ordinary and extraordinary lives and moments, of people who were shaped by their times and in turn shaped the communities around them. The structures we'll be conjuring up through old photographs and articles once served as tangible connections to the past, and their disappearance now leaves a void, a silent, invisible gap where history once stood. And as places like these disappear, future generations are left with fewer opportunities to encounter the past in a profound and palpable way. Okay, enough preaching to the choir. Join me as we look at some of our sadly departed Old Virginia homes. Let's go. House number 1, Roseland Manor. The first house on this tour was a showstopper. Rosland Manor, also known as the Strawberry Banks Manor House, once stood as one of the most striking Gilded Age residences along the shores of Hampton Roads. Built circa 1886 for the prominent entrepreneur Harrison Phoebus, the mansion embodied a rare moment of post-Civil War prosperity and ambition in a region still recovering from economic hardship. At this point in time, Virginia was seeing few examples of conspicuous consumption in domestic architecture, since it was still suffering from the hardships of Reconstruction. Architecturally, Roseland Manor was a remarkable example of the chateau-esque Queen Anne style, designed by Arthur Crooks. Crooks was an English-American architect who was highly regarded for his designs of primarily ecclesiastical buildings in New York for Roman Catholic clients. So clearly Phoebus had some pull and the means to have this prominent New York-based architect design his house. His influence was so significant that a nearby town was later renamed in his honor. Phoebus envisioned this house as both a personal residence and a symbol of refinement overlooking the water. And he embraced architectural exuberance. The home's ornate detailing set it apart from the more restrained building traditions of Virginia houses of the time. Roseland featured complex roof lines, decorative masonry, and an imposing silhouette that echoed the opulent mansions of northern cities like Newport, Rhode Island. And its commanding position above Hampton Roads enhanced its dramatic presence. Roseland was a clear statement of wealth and became a regional landmark. Unfortunately, Phoebus died before the home was completed, so he was never able to truly enjoy the experience of residing here and presiding over his domain in splendor. His widow, Annie, finished the house and lived there until her death in 1906. Following a number of owners in the 20th century, the manor at one time served as part of a hotel complex. But changing economic conditions and the challenges of maintaining such a large historic structure led to a period of decline. However, it was still considered a landmark, and was listed as such in 1978 when it was added to the Virginia Register of Historic Landmarks. But the final chapter of Roseland Manor came in 1985 when a devastating fire swept through the building, reducing the elaborate mansion to ruins and leading to its delisting from the register. Local authorities and news reports from the era stated that investigators could not determine a definitive origin for the blaze, leaving the official cause undetermined. Today, Roseland Manor exists only in photographs and memory, reminding us of the potentially fleeting nature of even the grandest structures. If you have any memories of Roseland Manor, please share these in the comments. I'd love to learn more. House number 2, the Henrietta Lacks house. So this next house is not an architectural showstopper. It's located in Roanoke, and it's the unremarkable childhood home of the remarkable Henrietta Lacks. This house stood until 2019 when it was demolished by the city, who didn't really know what a cultural landmark they had. If you're not familiar with Henrietta Lacks, her story is fascinating. Born in 1920 in Virginia, she would unknowingly become one of the most important figures in modern medicine. While being treated for cancer, her cells, taken without her knowledge, contributed to many, many medical breakthroughs. But because they were taken without her knowledge, this also contributed to an ethical dilemma about patient consent. Henrietta Lacks' cells were special in, unlike other human cells that die off quickly in the lab, hers kept growing, doubling roughly every 24 hours, and could be continuously cultured. They came to be known as HeLa, from the first 2 letters of her first and last names. NIH says research involving her cells has been described in more than 110,000 scientific publications. These HeLa cells contributed to the polio vaccine and were used to study viruses, cancer, radiation, hormones, genetics, toxins, and the basic mechanics of cell behavior. Back to Roanoke. For years, one of the houses tied to her childhood stood quietly on Norfolk Avenue. It was a simple American foursquare, weathered by decades of use and neglect. Few people realized its significance, including local officials and the property's owners. By the late 2010s, the house had fallen into serious disrepair. City inspectors deemed it unsafe and ultimately approved its demolition. A classic case of demolition by neglect, allowing a building to deteriorate to the point that restoration becomes unreasonable. In 2019, the structure was torn down, just as a historian had begun to uncover the home's connection to Henrietta Lacks. The discovery came too late. Within weeks of identification, the house was gone. You can read the book about her or see the movie, but her house is gone. The city has since commemorated her legacy with a statue and historic marker, but an empty lot where her house once stood reminds us how important it is to thoroughly understand the cultural significance of a property, even if it seems derelict and devoid of architectural significance, before throwing it away. Numbers 3 and 4. I'm pairing the next 2 houses because they both had such an uncommon and distinctive feature rarely, if ever, seen on Virginia dwellings, or even in the United States. Wolftrap Farm, but not the arts venue in Vienna. This Wolftrap Farm is in Isle of Wight County, and Bewdley in Lancaster County. Both had a double tier of dormer windows. Let's start with Wolftrap Farm. Built around 1820 for the Jones family, this house was a small Federal-style frame structure organized on a practical double pile, 2 rooms deep, hall parlor plan, typical of early 19th century Virginia farmhouses. Yet what set Wolftrap apart was that unusual roofline, which is apparently common in parts of Central Europe, but rarely seen here in domestic architecture. The architectural comparison between Wolftrap Farm and Bewdley reveals both kinship and contrast. Bewdley was an earlier and more substantial Tidewater residence, but it also featured multiple tiers of dormers. Bewdley was built circa 1750 by Major James Ball, who was a cousin to George Washington's mother. Sadly, Bewdley was destroyed by fire in 1917. Despite its architectural importance, Wolftrap Farm followed a familiar and tragic trajectory for rural historic properties. Although it was recognized and listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1974, the house fell into neglect and was ultimately dismantled in 2012, leading to its removal from the register in 2017. Now, I'm not really sure why the word dismantle was used in reference to its delisting, but I assume it's another case of demolition by neglect. If you know more than I do about this property or terminology, please let me know in the comments. House number 5, the Rowe. Along the banks of the James River in Charles City County once stood a refined yet understated plantation house known as the Rowe. Although it was never one of Virginia's grandest estates, architecturally it was an elegant example of a provincial interpretation of Palladian design, that style inspired by classical ideals and popularized in colonial America through English pattern books. The Rowe featured a 3-bay, 2-story, pedimented center section flanked by lower wings. This format provided a convincing formality for what was otherwise a small house. The north wing predated the rest of the house and is thought to have been in existence before 1779, when the property was owned by David Minge. The house was then expanded to its final form by Minge's son, George Hunt Minge, before his death in 1808. But what I find perhaps even more interesting than the architecture is the man himself. As a landowner, Minge would have participated in a system built on enslaved labor. According to the Charles City County website, Minge made a significant decision to emancipate 87 slaves from the Rowe plantation. Supposedly, he gathered the enslaved individuals at the river's edge and informed them of their freedom, arranging for their transportation to Haiti, believing it would be beneficial for both them and his community. According to the website, Minge invested approximately $1,200 in supplies, including tools and provisions to ensure that they were well equipped for their new lives. The estimated value of the slaves he freed was around $26,000, a substantial amount in today's currency. The Rowe was listed as a Virginia Historic Landmark in 1977, but a site visit in 2007 revealed the house was no longer extant, and it was delisted in 2008. Apparently, it was either torn down or lost to the elements. As we've seen illustrated by these bygone buildings, when a historic home disappears from the landscape, we certainly lose the craftsmanship of another era and architectural details that can't be replaced. But it's not simply the wood, glass, brick, or stone that vanishes, but a segment of our cultural identity. The lived experiences ingrained within the home's very walls are all but erased. And historic homes anchor communities, reminding us that we are part of a larger story. Preservation is an act of respect. Respect for craftsmanship and artistry, respect for history, respect for the people of our past, and respect for those who deserve to experience all these things in the years to come. The careful stewardship of historic homes is not simply an act of nostalgia, it is a pledge to those who came before us and to those who will follow, that their stories will not be erased. Again, if you know anything about these homes or others that you'd like me to include in another video, please include as much information as you can in the comments. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of these lost Old Virginia homes.